Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome back to our Zen Pilot webinar series. To another Zen Pilot webinar. Today, we'll be talking about 5 tips for a successful project management implementation. I hope you all are doing fine today. We're definitely doing okay. Jeff, are you doing okay?
Now
Doing
the power's back
fine.
on. I'm doing great. Doing great.
Power's back for Jeff. Hooray! Okay. Let me pull up the slides for you here. What have I got? Okay. Gonna present. Gonna make it full screen. I hope you can read this. This is our welcome slide and a little bit of quick. Okay, the chat. Okay, chat is saying. Okay,
AI
somebody got
assistants.
an AI assistant. That's all
The
good.
bots are here.
That's
They're
all.
coming for us.
The bots are. They're invading. Okay. All right. Welcome everybody to the webinar. Let's get the show on the road. Let's keep things moving. First of all, quick housekeeping. The GIF on the right is a pop quiz for everyone. Whoever recognizes this guy, like we're putting a date on everybody today. Whoever recognizes this guy, leave a message in the chat, okay? Because Jeff was mentioning he used to play the sax. I immediately thought of this guy, and yeah, we had a good laugh about it before the show. Now, for Q&A during this webinar, please leave it in the Q&A section. Please and thank you. If you leave it in the chat, we might lose it. Okay. Also, don't be shy in the chat. I can see that this group does not have that problem, so that's awesome. Leave your observations, comments, if a particular, I don't know, comment resonates with you, or like a particular pain point is you're thinking like that is so me. Leave it in the chat. We want to hear about it so that we can tailor the content to you. This is live, so this will all be better tailored if you give us your reactions. Now, for the webinar recording, this will be available, so don't you worry. This will be available like within a day or two. I'll be sending out via email, and you don't need to do anything extra to get the recording. If you signed up for this, we have your email. You'll get the webinar to that email. And last but not least, if you want to know about more upcoming ZenPilot events, probably the best way to know about them, you'll get information in your inbox directly, is to sign up for the ZenPilot newsletter. Go to zenpilot.com/newsletter. You'll be getting first class operations, which is written with love by yours truly, bi-weekly or so. And you can also follow us on LinkedIn, because sometimes we do LinkedIn live streams. This is not one of those. We're on Zoom right now. And that's it for housekeeping. Let me check the chat quickly. My cousin? What is? Oh,
That's who plays the
you
saxophone.
sent your, yeah, you sent your message not to everyone but to hosts and panelists. So if you want everybody to see it, you need to change that setting in Zoom. Is that really your cousin? I want to know the deets on that. But I'll move on in the meantime. Okay, so quick intro to ZenPilot. Hello. Our mission here, well, not just today, but in general, is to help agencies and other service-based businesses and a bunch of other businesses besides, including internal marketing teams, for example. We help them, all of them, cancel chaos and create clarity. How do we do that? Well, primarily we do that by focusing on 3 key pieces: the project management tooling, the processes, and the habits. Everything, all 3 of those come together to create what we call gold standard operations. And gold standard operations and a work management system that just works, it's easy to use, and it creates visibility for your leadership team, surfacing insights that allow you to make great business decisions. That is what we do here at ZenPilot. In other words, we help you create a productive, profitable, and healthy team. Our tool of choice for project management tools is ClickUp, and that's where our expertise runs deepest. And within that, we help with everything: training and coaching your team, architecturing. Is that a word? We create the architecture in ClickUp, design it and implement it. We help you with automations and integrations, and with the whole change management piece of it, including handholding and pep talks as needed. Today, we'll be talking about like the success of project management implementations in general, but I imagine, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, some ClickUp examples might be in there.
Yes.
And okay, thank you for confirming, Jeff. That was great. I was waiting for that for what felt like 2 weeks.
You're welcome. You're
That moment
welcome.
of silence killed me. Okay, and the first thing that we've got for you today before we launch into the content is, if you haven't been to zenpilot.com/resources already, we encourage you to go there, because we've got free guides, additional video training in there as well. Some of it is fairly specific. For example, I think I saw something there about like ClickUp HubSpot integration, or like workload management within ClickUp. There's a bunch of things that you can grab from there. So be sure to check that out for any of your other project management and operations needs And finally, if any of this, what you're going to hear today, sounds like it addresses your current needs and problems at your company for your team, we highly encourage you to book a ClickUp strategy session with us. ClickUp strategy session, you might call it an operations strategy session. Sometimes I like to call it project management therapy as well. Tell us about your issues, where things are falling through the cracks, where work is too slow, not consistent, and we'll help you find solutions for all of that based on our experience with over 3,000 agency ops, makeovers, and implementations of project management systems. Go to zenpilot.com/call, get on our calendar. You've got nothing to lose. The call is free, and it can help you make your company more productive and more profitable. That is what we encourage you to do here today. So again, zenpilot.com/resources, zenpilot.com/call. And here's the agenda for today. And I'll let our illustrious speaker. I just realized I didn't even introduce us properly, but with you on the call, I'm Kuba. Hi, content marketing manager at Zenpilot and the host with the most for most of our events. I mean, I shouldn't be calling myself the host with the most, but I've heard rumors. And also with me on the call is Jeff. And Jeff, I'll let you introduce yourself and take over the screen share and launch into the content proper because the people are waiting for it.
Cool. Kuba, you want to stop sharing so that I can share? That's how it works inside of Zoom. Here we go. Let me get my
Very well.
screen
Okay.
up, get the right screen. But yeah, appreciate everyone coming out today. For those that don't know me, my name is Jeff Cipher, the productivity professor here at Zenpilot. Kuba gave us an introduction on who Zenpilot is. Myself, I've been in the sort of delivery side of the business, helped over 100 different agencies streamline their operations and really implement ClickUp overall. And love that process, love working with agencies, love kind of helping them figure out how to get the tooling right with the processes and the habits to really give them that clarity. I started off as a marketing consultant at the beginning of my sort of career and have transitioned after I fell in love with ClickUp and the operational side to now my current role here at Zenpilot. But huge ClickUp nerd as well. I've got all the different ClickUp badges that you could ever want. So just love the tool in general. But really what we want to talk about today, and I'd be curious from everyone, based off of our topic, like how many times in maybe the last 5 to 10 years your business has switched project management tools. Because the first piece that I want to talk about here in our agenda is focusing on why is this important? Why are we even talking about the 5 tips to successfully implement project management software? Because at Zenpilot, this is obviously near and dear to our hearts. This is what we do on a day-to-day basis. We've really refined our approach and how we do things over the last 10 plus years since really our beginning. And so in order to get project management software right, we obviously have to focus more than just the tooling. We have to focus on the processes and habit side, as Kuba said. But I'd be curious, as I jump into this, feel free to let us know how many times you have moved from one system to another in the last, let's say, 5 years. So feel free to throw those in the comments as I start to go on. And Kuba, you can monitor all those responses. But really why this is important, this topic, is because what we found over all of our sort of research and surveying of teams is that the typical agency is switching their project management systems every 17 to 18 months. So that's about every other year. They're kind of back in the sales process of figuring out, okay, how can we get a project management system that's actually going to work for our team? And this goes the same with a lot of pieces of technology as well, because oftentimes you see, hey, there's this new shiny platform that seems like it's going to solve all of my problems. You go through the sales process and they say, hey, especially with project management systems, your team's going to be more productive. In ClickUp's case, they say you're going to save 1 day per week. They say you're going to be more profitable. They say you're going to be a healthier team in general, and you'll be able to delegate work and do all of this stuff. But that doesn't necessarily happen if you're just going to kind of go from and solely focus on the technology. Because again, the technology is really only one piece of the formula. And so when you go through that sales process, you get that new tool set up rather quickly, you find yourself realizing, hey, it's not actually working for our team. We're not really all that much more productive. I can't actually delegate work to the team. I'm not getting the visibility that I was hoping. And so then maybe you continue to try to make it work, or you go hire a tech consultant, that maybe a ClickUp consultant in this case, that's just going to be able to make a few tweaks, maybe adjust a dashboard for you. But again, that dashboard's not going to give you anything if you don't have good data in the system to know where time's being spent and things like that. So that's really why this is a big problem. We don't want teams to be switching project management systems every 17 to 18 months, because what that does is it really kills momentum at your business, because your team is going to be like, hey, we know the system's not going to work. You're just saying it is. We know you got all these flashy tools that you're going to put in front of us, but it's not actually going to make our lives easier. So we want to make sure, hey, we get one system running, and that's the last time we're going to have to implement it so that you could really gain momentum, build that single source of truth, and make your team more productive, profitable, and healthy, as we say at ZenPilot. And so again, the reason that this is happening is because people only focus on the technology side of it. They think that the tool is going to solve all of their problems, whether it's ClickUp, whether it's teamwork, whether it's Productive, which is the new tool out there, or Asana or Monday. You're going to go through that sales process and they're going to promise you a whole lot. But again, if you don't implement it correctly, it's not going to help. So in terms of what agencies are trying to achieve, as Kuba said, we're in ZenPilot, we're trying to cancel chaos and create clarity. And so that clarity is going to look like your account managers knowing what's going on across all of their different clients, down to the level of knowing where all each of those deliverables are, down to the task, down to the comments, things like that, as well as your project managers actually being able to see workload and capacity, your leadership team being able to see profitability, being able to see how your team's actually doing, client health, your individual contributors being able to see what's on their plate today, tomorrow, in the future. So that's really what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to get clarity for every level of the organization. But the only way we can get there is not just the tooling. We also need to focus on the process side of it. So building out and documenting your processes and then saving those as templates. But then in addition, this is the least sexiest part, as we always say it, but it's also the most important, and really where we're going to be focusing on today is getting your team to build healthy habits that's actually going to get them to communicate in the right place, to actually go ahead and track their time or to close their tasks, and to use the system in one cohesive way. That way we have confidence in what's actually in that project management system. That way we are confident that the data that we're getting in a dashboard is correct. And so really, again, where I'm focusing on in this workshop today is going to be how we can get good processes, how we can get good habits, and really what are the 5 tips to help you get there. And so we've done this over the last 10 years with over 3,000 different agencies. So that's where a lot of these tips are coming from today. And Kuba, feel free to stop me as I go on in this conversation. If there's any questions that come up on specific things, I'd be curious about any of those that come up.
I'm
But
keeping
as
an eye on everything. No questions thus far. I encourage everybody to drop their kind of case, their situation in the chat. But so far, smooth sailing. You're free to proceed.
Awesome. Appreciate it. So the first, let's actually jump into the 5 tips. And so for those 5 tips, I actually have a massive Miro board. This is kind of like how I like to present all this data and information. So I'm going to be jumping from Miro. We're going to jump into ClickUp to make this a very much like practical. You can go ahead and implement some of this right away. But again, I have 5 tips here. The first one is going to be the most important, and this is how we actually start off all of our engagements with any of our clients. We have, for those that know ZenPilot, we always start off with a blueprint process. But really what we're trying to do here is design the system first. And so again, as marketers, if there's a lot of marketers out there, again, we're focused a lot on marketing agencies, but marketers always know, and you're probably telling your clients, hey, if you want to use that piece of account-based marketing software or that CRM system or whatever, you need a strategy and you need an actual system to make that tool work for you. Like I worked at an account-based marketing software company, and we were all focused on like the strategy is such a big part of it. You can sure use that piece of software to maybe run some ads, but ABM is not all about running ads. ABM is about really getting your message in front of the right user at the right time across multiple different channels and really focusing on specific accounts to do that. And with that comes a strategy, not just the tooling part of it. So the same thing happens with project management systems. But the thing that people do is they want to get into the system so quickly that they just take the data that they have in the old one and they use some sort of CSV export and import and to get it into the other one. And then it doesn't end up working because that new piece of technology is not going to solve anything with bad data and bad processes and bad habits. So really what we're doing, the first one here, again, you want to design your system before you actually jump into any of the tooling. So what we want to do is really identify the core problem that we're facing and design a system to fix it. And so I have a couple different steps that you can follow and some ideas to kind of help with this as we go through. But the first thing that you want to do, and this is really where you want to start to get your leadership team together as you're maybe deciding to move into a new system. First, you want to figure out what are you actually trying to achieve. And I recommend, we're actually on the EOS framework, and you always have scorecards in EOS to be able to track, like, are things on track or off track? So you want to think about what are those variables that you're actually trying to achieve? What are those benchmarks that you're trying to hit? And you actually want to get those listed out in a scorecard so we know in the future, did we actually hit those? Because sometimes maybe you're jumping into a new system for productivity improvements, but sometimes it's just for increases in utilization. Sometimes it's for increases in client health or decreases in client churn. Sometimes maybe it's just a boost in your overall agency health for your team members. So you want to decrease those or increase the retention rates for your team. So figure out what those things are that you're trying to achieve and actually get those benchmarked and built into a scorecard so you can see sort of in the future, hey, are we actually pacing towards that? Because you always want to know, like, what are the results after based off of what we've set up. So again, that's sort of the first step that we do in our blueprint process is figure out with you, what is this that you're actually trying to achieve? Then with that, you can start to think about what's actually blocking you from achieving that. And so in order to do that, there's a couple different steps here. And one of the big things that I'd recommend and that we do here at ZenPilot is you really want to get your whole team involved in this process to really understand how they're feeling, what they're doing on a daily basis to really discover what those root issues might be. So to give you an example of what we kind of do in our blueprint process is we actually send out a survey to the whole team to start to understand and get some qualitative and quantitative information to really understand how the team is feeling about your current setup right now. So to give you some examples of some questions that you could ask them to figure out what their habits are and how they're feeling to determine sort of what's working and what's not working are, for one, like, how do you start each day to identify, prioritize, and plan your work? And sometimes this can be very surprising. Sometimes people say, hey, I really have no idea what I need to do on a daily basis. Some people go to maybe somewhere and ClickUp. Some people just have a notebook out. So we want to know, like, hey, are people kind of following the same process of what we've put in front of them to identify, prioritize, and plan their workout, or is that not the case? In addition, what is your routine to end each day and manage any outstanding work? Like, what are they doing at the end of the day if they don't finish all of their tasks and they have overdues coming up? We want to figure out what those habits are. Some other ones, just some basic questions are like, what are the top challenges from your team? What's currently working well and what's not working well? We want to understand all of that information so that we can build a system that is going to help serve our team, which when you serve your team, then it's also going to serve you well. Because I've been in an environment where, like, we went through a project management implementation and leadership didn't like get the team involved whatsoever. And so we kind of knew that the system was just to serve them. It was not to help us out at all. And your team's going to really start to see that. Like, this is a whole change management component. We're really changing the way people work on a daily basis. So you want to make sure you're getting team involved early on so that they're bought in, they're excited to feel like, hey, we have voiced our opinion. They know how we're feeling. And ultimately, you're going to have to make a decision. Like, you can't suit everyone perfectly to what they want, but you want to get them sort of involved early on in the process. So again, we do that. And in our blueprint, sorry, Kuba, go for it.
Can I just share like a 30-second pet peeve? If you could zoom back in on the questions, like the first one, how do you start each day? One thing that happened in my old team at my previous company, which I should have responded to much more strongly and much sooner, is I could be, I was managing a team of 10. I could be on a one-on-one with one of my direct reports, and we would be talking about our data in ClickUp. And I would say, the tasks maybe aren't updated, or like, is this all up to date? And they would say, yeah, it's mostly up to date, but really, I just run a to-do list in Notepad, on my laptop. That's what I really follow day to day. Like, this is right now, I see that as an anti-pattern. Like, this is a clear sign that the system isn't working the way it's supposed to. Your to-do list, there should be like a ClickUp list and a separate Notepad list. It should be all one list. So surfacing these kinds of issues with a questionnaire like that is extremely important, and it's important that it's part of the process. Just a mini story, because it kind of gave me it reminded me of that, of like what I let slip, and it wasn't a good outcome in the end. I mean, we got a lot of value out of ClickUp, but not as much as we could have.
Thanks for adding that, Kuba. And so, yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of stories just like that. Vivian, I see your comment in there. And that's kind of the habits piece, which we'll get to later. But in this, what we typically do is we have open-ended questions like this, and also questions that are like, rank this on 1 to 5. And so basically what we do with that information is, hey, we're going to get that really good feedback that's open-ended from the team, but we're also going to get those 1 to 5 that like are going to help us sort of benchmark where an agency is. So in our blueprint process, we provide everyone with something just like this, where essentially it's saying like, hey, you're at this level. Your average was a 4.5 across the team. But compared to other agencies that have gone through this process, they're at 4.25. And so we can start to benchmark against other agencies that have gone through this to be able to see like how are we actually comparing to other agency results. And so this leads to very powerful conversations to say like, oh wow, our team does not think that our clients are lucky to be working with us. This is a huge issue that we wouldn't have known if we didn't do sort of surveying with a team like this. And so another piece or another recommendation I give you in this process is run surveys. Surveys are great because they can be anonymous or you can ask for their name or email. But they're kind of a great way for people that maybe are a little bit more introverted or like to give their feedback that way. They can just sort of punch it in and then you'll get that to have like a nice document like this. Otherwise, it's also helpful to have team meetings. Obviously, most of us are going to have team meetings regardless, but it's good to have a mix of these things. So you have surveys, team meetings, and one-on-ones and like interviews. So you're really able to capture sort of every personality there, because surveys will serve some of your team well, team meetings will serve other people well, and then one-on-ones will serve people well. So you'll get the extroverted and introverted. Maybe some people are more scared to voice their answers to in front of the whole company or in front of their whole department, whatever it may be. So it's good to have sort of a different levels in different ways, different avenues for people to give their feedback to you. So again, super important. Always get your team involved. Be thinking about them because this is going to help get buy-in. And when we're talking about change management here, we need to get buy-in from the team. So one thing you can actually do, and this is just another piece of it. So you have your team surveys, but it's also good for your leadership team to assess your operation as a whole. So we actually have a resource here. I'll actually put this in the chat if you want to take this after this webinar is over. This is just another way for you to kind of rank yourself on a 1 to 5 scale of like how you're feeling about your current operation. Again, it's good to get your whole leadership team to take this as we call it, the agency project management health benchmark. It's good to get them. And then this is also going to compare your results to other agencies to see where you stack up as well. But kind of a great way for you to just get sort of rankings on how your leadership team is feeling about your current project management environment. And so what all of that is going to do is that's going to help us sort of start to figure out what's working and not working. So after you get those answers to figure out like this is not fully just focused on the project management software. This is focused on the habits. This is focused on how we're serving our clients. This is focused on all of that information, just how people are feeling just health wise and working at the agency. But once you're done with that, now is the time to start focusing very much on the systems that we have in place right now. And so obviously this is a great way, and it's always good to get an outside perspective on your current setup and things like that. But I would take some time with your team, really figure out and go through your current project management environment. If you have sort of a whole workflow like of your client journey laid out as well, like in a Miro board, Lucid chart, wherever that is, it's also good to kind of put that in front of the whole team to figure out, hey, where are the bottlenecks and where does work break? Like which handoff, maybe we're going from sales to delivery, maybe we're crossing different departments. Where is work slipping through the cracks? Where are things breaking? What are habits that are causing us to not do so well? And figure out what those are and get them documented so that you can start to design a system that's going to help solve those. So again, go through your system, go through your setup. Again, it's always good to get an outside perspective on this. Feel free, again, if you want to book that ClickUp strategy call. This is like even we can come in and just kind of audit what you got going on right now and give you some recommendations. But again, lay out sort of your whole client journey, what you got, what you do as a business, and figure out where things are breaking. And then from there, what you really want to do is figure out what's that foundational problem. So is it actually a technology issue? Yes, there might be some cases where your project management system is not the right piece of technology to help you get the visibility and do what you're trying to do. That's not always the case. Like people can be thriving in ClickUp, but others are not doing so well in ClickUp. And that's the same with every other tool out there. Maybe it's a process issue. Maybe we just don't have our processes documented and our team's not following our proven process as an agency. So that's a big problem as well. Maybe it's just misaligned expectations. Maybe as we implemented this new tool, we didn't tell them, hey, this is where you should leave comments. This is what you should do when something goes overdue. And because of that, the team is not following expectations because they didn't know what those expectations were. And then often in the case, it's just a habitual problem that you really need to coach and hold your team accountable. So that's oftentimes the case that we run into. It's a big habits problem. You might have the right setup, you might have the processes, but the habits are really what's holding you back. And so from there, once you understand that foundational problem, you want to design a system that's going to help you really fix all of those issues that you're running into right now. And this is important because once I get this all laid out with my hierarchy, any automations I'm going to need, custom fields, and these are important in ClickUp, especially because if I want visibility to know like how profitable we are for this service line or work category. I need to have those custom fields built in. Or if I want to be able to, for a project manager, just see workload across my team, I might need another custom field there as well. We want to get those built before we jump too far ahead, because that's what's going to give us the visibility and dashboards and things like that. You can't just build a dashboard without good data. So those custom fields are going to be what gives us sort of those filters and things like that to get what we're looking for. In addition, the views are so important. Kuba and I just did a session last week. We can probably send that recording, Kuba, in the recap of this too, because the views are super important. You want to have those documented and basically show your team, hey, these are the views that you're going to use to do your job. And that's kind of what you should look at, because in ClickUp, as you know, there's 1,000 different views. This is the same with every project management system. Those views are super important for people to do their jobs. But if you have 1,000 views out there that aren't very specific for people, it's going to be overwhelming. So for demand, these are like account managers. We're going to have different views for you. As you can see here, those views, I'll zoom in a little bit, are going to be what's kind of shown here as well. So we're going to get those laid out, and they're going to be very specific to very specific roles. Same with resource seat. This is kind of our project managers. They're going to have views for them to do their jobs. Or fulfillment, these are the individual contributors that need to know what's on their plate. So they're going to have specific views as well. So make sure you design a system before you actually go into the technology. Design a system that's going to help your team do their jobs better, help them do better work faster, and things like that. And again, this is where it's always helpful to get an outside perspective like Zenpilot. We could take you through this process to help design a blueprint for understanding what the core problems are and designing a system that's going to help fix those. But again, start here, build this out, get your whole team sort of excited and bought into what the system is going to be, explain it to them, give them clarity on the timeline as well. And then from there, now you're ready to start building this into your actual piece of technology, whatever that may be. In this case, we always recommend ClickUp for the most part, and I'll jump into a lot of ClickUp examples in just a moment. But that's just the first tip. After we design the system, my next tip is going to be very important here too. And this comes into play when you have a habit side. And so Vivian, this is kind of to your point, how you said a lot of data was missing, like comments and attachments. So you had to start merging comments and attachments together, and it was a lot of work. This is where it's super important as you're implementing any system. And I'm sure a lot of people do this, but they don't always do it right. You want to make sure you're training your team, not just on the software, but also train them on your expectations of them. Because we want to make sure we're providing clarity for the team to say, like, hey, this is how you're going to communicate in the system. This is how and where you're going to track your time. This is how you're going to prioritize your work. This is what you're going to do when work falls overdue. And always have somewhat of a 10 commandments, which I'll jump into in a little bit, but have sort of a method that they should follow in that system. Because oftentimes when I'm auditing different workspaces, whatever system it may be, oftentimes what I notice is that it's mainly the problem is not their setup or structure. It's oftentimes just the way that the team is working, because people are all working in their own different ways. So people are leaving comments here or over here. Some people are in Slack, or some people are in ClickUp. And oftentimes, if the team's all working and operating differently, it's so impossible for you to build a single source of truth to really understand what's actually happening across the agency. And it's harder to hold the team accountable unless you actually give them your method for how we're going to operate in the system. Sorry, Kuba, I just saw you come on, so I'm not sure if you wanted to say something, but I'll pass it over to you for a second.
I turned on my camera and mic specifically to share an analogy. I've got a I've got a 3-year-old at home, and he's all about testing boundaries. You know, like, can I do this? Can I do that? Like, if I start splashing water when I'm in the bath, what's going to happen? And when you let people into your new project management system, they're kind of like toddlers too. You know, like, how serious is leadership about this change? And I've seen it happen. And again, I did not react either swiftly or strongly enough, where it was like, okay, what if I let some due dates slip? What if I have an overdue task, or 5 overdues, or 10, or 20, you know? Or like, what if I make my tasks really, really big? So it's, you know, like this one blog post is just one parent task, and I just leave a comment there every 2 days or something. I just leave it in an in progress kind of status, but nobody knows if it's like first draft, second draft, almost published, is it blocked, etc. So that's why this expectations piece is so important. You need to just look at certain behaviors, cache them in the system, and say, this is not okay. This task is not granular enough, or moving due dates constantly is not okay. You need to leave an update as to why the due date was moved, etc., etc. There's a ton of different things to pay attention to. But yeah, if you don't catch behaviors like this early, And if you don't react like clearly enough with clarity, we talk about clarity a lot here at ZenPilot, then you can start kind of slowly building up these habit or behavior issues. And I just wanted to add that piece in.
Cool. Appreciate it, Kuba. But yeah, I mean, it's so important with all of this, like training on software and expectations. Most people are going to train the software and give them like a ClickUp onboarding course, which is helpful. But again, train them on your expectations as a business. Figure out what those expectations are. Build your kind of 10 commandments. As you can see here, I actually just put out a YouTube video on a lot of this, but think of things that like are your bare minimum of like, these are the laws that we need to follow. One of them is if it's not in ClickUp, it didn't happen. So for this case, this is, hey, whatever you're doing, it needs to be in the system. That's our single source of truth. If it's not in there, we're just going to assume you didn't do it. And so we need to make sure, like, if we're sending something to the client, that we have that task in the system so that everyone knows. Or if you need to leave a comment, if you need to track your time, we're just going to assume that you didn't do something if it's not actually in ClickUp to build that single source of truth. That's probably one of the most important that your team needs to follow. In addition, things like due dates matter, as Kuba just mentioned. If you're just moving due dates every single day, you're like, I didn't get to it. I didn't get to it. I didn't get to it. Who is that going to help? How are we going to help prioritize work? How are we going to know when something's actually done? If you want to build realistic timelines for your clients, you need to make sure that your whole team is believing in things like due dates matter. If I say it's going to be due on Friday, July 19th, that means that's when it's due. If we're going to stick to any of the timelines that we've given our clients, we need to make sure we're following that as well. So there's a bunch of different commandments that you can put in here. That's always like the first part of our training that we take teams through. If I get to the right screen here. But it's so important to make sure, like, hey, if you have training courses for your team, that should be one of the biggest things that you're having them sort of walk through, just so that's like the first thing that they know about, even before you get to the software. These are our expectations. This is how we're going to operate. Make sure you follow our proven process here. So again, train them on the software and the expectations. A couple different ways that you can do this that we found very helpful is one, put together pre-recorded training. So one of the biggest things that we have at ZenPilot is a whole like training center where we're going to have our ClickUp certification as well as any implementation training. It's helpful to have both that pre-recorded training. You can host this. You can host it in ClickUp Doc. Like if you just record some Loom videos or whatever tool you're using, you can even record directly on ClickUp. We have a tool called Circle. There's School out there. Whatever it is, just build out like your training course and have your team be able to take that. The advantage of a tool like Circle for us is obviously we can track progress, and we can also put like quizzes and things in there to be able to see like, hey, did you actually pay attention to this, instead of just kind of going through it on 2.0 speed or 2x speed and not actually paying attention to any of it. So have pre-recorded training. That way they can watch it, and as they're watching it, they can also set some things up and kind of put like a split screen of my pre-recorded training next to ClickUp. And then after they take that pre-recorded training, also host live trainings. So this is a big part that we do. Like we'll have everyone go through our ClickUp certification and then have everyone jump on to a full team training where essentially we're going to reinforce what they learned in that pre-recorded training, but then we're also going to be there to answer questions and sort of build alignment across the team, help communicate the timeline, and just walk through scenarios as well, because there's always specific things of like, oh, what do we do when this happens? When a client has a request, what's the best way to put it in ClickUp? And so we want to walk through those scenarios just to help the team understand like how they're going to operate in specific things. And then in addition with that live training, you can do it with the full team, but then also think about like those specific roles, like your project managers, how are they going to operate? Your account managers, individual contributors, or even your contractors, you can also train up on how they're going to operate with us inside of our ClickUp environment. So have both of those. The advantage of the pre-recorded training as well is that once you build that asset, then as you onboard new people later on, you're going to have that already built out for them to do in their first couple of weeks at your company. So do both of these. I can't trust the importance enough. I'll also say pre-recorded training. If I dive into what ours looks like, I have so many tabs open up top of my screen, I can never find it. But a couple things here that we're kind of walking people through, especially in any project management system, is how to set up like your initial task view where you're going to see your work. But so important is teach people how to set up their notifications inside of your project management system. If they do not do this right off the bat, they will be overwhelmed by the amount of emails that they get. So super important. Always make sure the first thing they have people do is set up their notifications so that they're not just overwhelmed by the amount, because that's how you get people overwhelmed and not bought into the system. So have sort of an initial video like that for your team to watch and take.
Hey, I can offer, like, if anybody emails me at, I'm going to drop my email in chat. If anybody emails me at this address, just put, I don't know, ClickUp notifications in the subject line. We have a cheat sheet of how you should set up your ClickUp notifications so that you get notifications about the most important things, but also you don't drown in the notifications. It's like, honestly, it's a screenshot of our settings one to one, what we use. So if you want that, just send me an email to the email address in the chat and I can send that over to you if that's of any interest. Second thing I wanted to say is like, this is such a common pitfall. Like I've heard teams ask themselves, like, should we do pre-recorded training or should we do live training? It's both. For change management to stick, you often need to reinforce things time and time again, many times initially, and then regularly after the change. Uh, Jeff, I was wondering if you're seeing Adam's question in the Q&A. Would it be a good time to address this, or shall we leave it for later?
Let's leave this for later because I'll go into some stuff that Adam could potentially do in his system to help out with that.
Oh, okay, amazing. So, Adam, the answer is coming up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's it. Please proceed. This is all awesome. Yeah, let's move on.
And I'll say with this, in terms of timeline, if you're wondering, most often when you're going to get your team into any of this training is going to be like 1, 2, or 3 weeks before you're actually going to launch. So again, with the designing the system, also have like a timeline. We always bring up the example of Domino's, like they have their pizza tracker. You know exactly where it's at each stage of the way and know when it's actually going to be delivered or ready to pick up. So kind of follow that process where you have a clear timeline of like, hey, this is when we're potentially going to launch. This is when you're going to be trained. So give them that clear timeline. And with this, have them start getting trained about a week, 2, maybe 3 before you're going to be actually migrating into that new system and launching inside of ClickUp or whatever it is. So give them that so that they can start to get prepped, adjust their notification settings, build their My Task View, things like that. Is super helpful for them. But now when we've actually trained them, the next piece and kind of going with that is picking a clear launch date. So this is super important because what we're trying to build is a single source of truth. And the way to create not a single source of truth is to be working out of 2 systems at one time. So oftentimes what people do is they kind of take one system that they have, the old one, and then the new one. As I mentioned before, they kind of do a CSV export out of the old system and then a CSV import into the new one. Don't do that because what you're going to do is you're going to have 2 systems live at one time. People won't know sort of what the clear like project status and things are. They don't know when things are actually due, which one they should follow. So just make sure, again, when you're training your team, say, hey, we're going to be launching on what, Monday, July, is that the 21st? Monday, July 21st. Let's go with that. This is when you're going to be coming into work on that morning and you're going to be fully inside of ClickUp. Sure, you can use that old system to reference maybe any comments or documentation if you have to, but none of that is realistic. You're fully working out of the new system that we've just set up. So make sure you set a clear launch date. Oftentimes this is going to be on a Monday morning, and then we're migrating all work on like a Thursday or Friday. So we have the weekend as some flex time, but your whole team's going to come on Monday morning and they're going to be right into that new system. So we're going to seamlessly migrate work from one to the other and then build that single source of truth from the get-go. The reason that's important is because if we want to be able to start to see how the team's developing those habits, we need that single source of truth, and it's all got to be in that one place. And so what we often recommend at Zenpilot, and if you've seen any of our content before, we're big believers in you always want to have all of your sort of processes built out inside of ClickUp first. So again, instead of you kind of going in and jumping into your new system by doing a CSV export and import, build out all of your processes, all of your workflows, everything that you do as a business before. And that's why this process takes a little bit longer than just a couple of weeks. Like if someone tells you, hey, you'll be live in your new system in 1 week or less, sure, you can be live in the new system, but you've basically just implemented just a piece of technology. You haven't actually implemented any sort of new agency operating system that's going to help your team do better work and actually make you more productive, more profitable, or healthy as an organization. We want to make sure that we're building sort of a new work structure. And so in order for us to build that new work structure, we need to actually have the workflows and things like that in place to make your team operate in a new way. And so with that, what I typically recommend, we have so much content in that. I don't want to spend too much time here, but just make sure all of these are built out. Like the way that we operate is parent tasks, and this is for ClickUp, but it's also for other systems. Parent task is that deliverable. The subtasks are all the steps that people are actually going to complete. All these are broken down as sort of bite-sized pieces. We always reflect this due date is the DO date when you're actually supposed to do it methodology. If you have any questions about any of that, please let me know. But I always recommend build out all of these processes first so that you have all of these as reusable process templates that you can use over and over and over again. You have all the due dates, time estimates, and any custom fields, as we talked about earlier. Those are all built in here as well, with dependencies too to help us remap due dates. But we have all of these saved. We're also going to have a folder template for us to use for all of our new clients. Again, this is probably too much in the weeds right now. But when you actually go to migrate work, essentially what you're going to do now is you're going to move all of your client folders over here with that client folder template. And I'm going to take these templates and deploy them one by one by one. It does take time, I will be honest, but what that's going to do is now we're going to have all of our different workflows here. I can assign them out, make sure all the due dates reflect reality, and do all that. Basically, get all the work set up for your team, get it all signed out with the appropriate due dates and any other resources we're going to need so that they come in on a Monday morning and they're going to be able to go to, as I mentioned before, their My Task view and be able to see all the work that's on their plate. In this case, I have a lot of overdues. This is a demo portal. Please forgive me. But they're going to come to work and they're going to see like, hey, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to do this, so on and so forth. We want to build a system that has all the tasks in there. So for that case, use process templates and save them and then reuse them over and over again. But again, we have a lot of resources on there. We can always do a whole nother webinar on just that topic, but just make sure you have a whole process library built out, saved as templates, and then deploy those to get your new system actually set up and ready to go. Kuba, anything to add there on your side? Otherwise, I'll just keep trucking forward.
No, this is all great. Just wanted to remind anybody else who wants to take advantage of the ClickUp notifications cheat sheet to send me an email. I got a couple already. I'll try to get these to you as quickly as possible. But in the meantime, can I just say I'm just loving the way this is presented? Like, I think this is the first or second time we're doing the Miro board, and like this is so nice to look at. There's so much to kind of to analyze here. But anyway, there'll be time to exchange feedback after the call. You're free to proceed.
I'm welcoming you all to my brain. This is my whole brain is documented in Miro. So if you're ever curious about that, let me know. Jump on a call. Anyways, so picking a clear launch date, that's super important because you want to create that single source of truth to help you catch habits and then correct habits in the future. And so again, there's a lot more we could discuss there, but just make sure the biggest thing here, Thursday, Friday, migrate work into the new system. Don't do a CSV export and import. Build your processes and then use those processes. You're actually building out a new agency operating system. And then from there, launch on a Monday morning. Everyone comes in. Hey, my work is in here. I'm good to go. This is what I need to prioritize, so on and so forth. It's all in there for them. And so after that, now we're kind of getting into, Adam, your question about if maybe you have a system that's already integrated, how do you start to change current habits in the system? And so the biggest thing is, one, Adam, you want to train the team on sort of, hey, these are our new expectations. This is what we want to do, how we're going to operate. So have those sort of commandments, as I showed earlier. You'll want to make sure that you have those so people know like, hey, what's required of me? How should I be communicating? So train them first. But now the biggest piece of this inside of the system that we're building here is we're building a single source of truth that's going to help us hold the team accountable. And so this is oftentimes a step that people miss because they go and implement a tool and they're like, all right, we're all good. We can kind of take our hands off and everyone's going to be operating in this new structure. It's good. This is so important. If you don't hold the team accountable, there is a chance that you could have just spent so much dang time to implement that. But then if you're not holding the team accountable and they're not like, you're not following up to see if people are completing their tasks on time or moving due dates, things like that, then there's a chance that your system is just going to be a complete disaster in about 1 or 2 months. So important here. Make sure that you build a culture of accountability. And in order to do that, we have a clear cadence that we're following. And so within this step, you'll probably hear us all the time talk about a ClickUp champion. So you'll want to bring someone onto the team. This is not a full-time job. This is just someone that is maybe a project manager, not necessarily on the leadership team, because you want someone to also hold your leadership team accountable. And people, like, if the leader is the one kind of being like, hey, do this, do that, sometimes it's helpful if it's like someone that's kind of their peer, but also there to be like, hey, I'm also holding the leadership team accountable. Sometimes the rest of your team's also going to like that. So maybe it's a project manager, maybe it's account manager, maybe it's just someone that's very process oriented and systems driven, that's just kind of taking maybe 10 to 15 minutes a day and kind of going through and auditing the system. So what I'd recommend here, the biggest thing I'll call out is have someone do a daily spot check inside of your ClickUp environment. This is what your ClickUp champion will do. So every single day, they're going to come in and we actually have a task that's recurring inside of ClickUp. They come here, they'll be assigned to this one. And essentially what it is what you're doing is you're reviewing overdue tasks, you're checking for unassigned tasks, because If a task goes in the system and it's not assigned, there's a good chance that it's going to fall through the cracks. We need to have assignees on every task. So it's helpful if someone's auditing that just to make sure that every task is assigned. In addition, check for tasks that don't have a due date, because if it doesn't have a due date and we're driven by due dates, that's how we operate. If it doesn't have a due date on there, it's not going to show up on someone's task view to be able to complete it. So we want to make sure every task has a due date, also has an assignee on there, because that's how we're actually going to get work assigned and make sure it doesn't slip through the cracks. In addition, we also want to check to see if people are actually tracking time. If this is super important, which I believe it is for agencies, just because that's how you're going to collect a lot of good data. It's not necessarily to be like a big brother or anything, but it's a way for us to know like how profitable are we for each of these clients and services. And this is really, once you build a system that has what I've just talked about, time tracking is a great way for you to track issues, but also just get a lot of data for your business. So we want to make sure the team's actually tracking time. And if you tell people that they're going to be using a time tracker instead of just uploading the time later on, we want to make sure everyone's time isn't just like 5, 10, 15, 20, 25-minute increments. We want to make sure it's like actually exact so we can see if they're actually using that time tracker. In addition, super important, you want to review any unread notifications. There's a way to do that in ClickUp, which I'll show you. Big thing here, if we're going to be communicating inside of ClickUp, we want to make sure everyone is clearing their notifications. Same thing with an email inbox. If I have 500 unread emails and I see that, am I going to check them? Probably not. So we want to make sure each and every day people are going to inbox 0 and they're checking all the notifications, they're communicating well. And so if someone has a ton of unread notifications, that probably means they're not doing super well there. In addition, check to see if people are updating due dates without explanations. That's one thing we recommend. One of our sort of commandments is if you have to move a due date, just leave a comment on that task to mention any other stakeholders or people that are going to need to know about that. That's super important. In addition, you can escalate major issues for the team as well. If there's anyone that maybe needs to be coached a little further, maybe someone has not operated well for the last month. So we need to call that out to the leadership team to say, hey, person's not really adapting to the culture that we have as an agency. Maybe it's time to have a hard conversation. And so in order to do that, you can actually create dashboards. And I have another YouTube video out there that actually walks through how to set this one up. But the beauty of ClickUp, and other systems do this, but not near as well. ClickUp's probably the best one for building a dashboard like this. Is if I'm that ClickUp champion, I'm in charge of that daily spot check, I can come here and start to look at this information. So I can build a dashboard. I can also use views, but I can start to funnel all of those tasks that don't have an assignee on it. And the cool part about ClickUp is I can also see who created that task. So I can say, hey, this is actually me that created it without an assignee. Now I know who to leave a comment to, an at mention. So we want to make sure we're going through that to see where there's no assignees on a task, no due date on a task, no time estimate as well. If you really want to have a good workload view, you need to make sure that you have a time estimate on every task as well. But very important, assignees and due dates are what's going to make so work doesn't slip through the cracks. And then also overdue tasks. I can see all those in here. As you can see, we have 976. That's a lot, probably way more than we want. So in that case, now I need to start leaving comments in all these to say, hey, why is this overdue? Can you leave some feedback for me? We need to get this done, especially if we're trying to keep good timelines for our clients. So they'll go through all of that, just kind of see like a task by task audit there. And as this may seem overwhelming with 976, but as you get like good, better habits each day, this number will drop down to maybe just 2 overdues. And so you'll just kind of flag those and things like that. So you can really start to see that positive momentum moving forward as these numbers narrow down even further. But that's going to be what helps build those habits across the team. If they're being called out every time a due date falls behind or something like that, it'll be good for them. In addition, looking at time entries in here as well, I can start to see who's actually been reporting time. This is a demo portal, so there's not a ton of data in here, but as you'll see, the whole team, Kuba, you're not tracking your time in here. What the heck? That's when we
Oh
know,
gosh.
okay, maybe it's time to talk to Kuba and be like, hey, we need you to start tracking your time here so we can get like a good visual for us to know like where are we working, how profitable are our clients, or even be able to invoice clients as well. It's super important. It oftentimes it's helpful to set a threshold for people. So it might not be 40 hours a week from the get-go. It might just be just the billable time. It might just be 20 hours a week, something like that, kind of build and ramp up that time tracking if the team's never done it before. Also,
Jeff, quick question. We've got in the chat, not in the open chat, but to us, what is the YouTube link for a walkthrough of this dashboard that Jeff mentioned? Which dashboard were we on so I can share the right link?
it's a ClickUp Champion one. I'll pull it up right now for you all just so you can have it. Let's pull it up.
I can share a quick tip in the meantime. You're talking about kind of the daily spot check from the perspective of the ClickUp champion. One thing that I found really neat as I was joining Zenpilot is I checked everybody's calendars. I was setting up these initial meetings with team members to get to know them better. And I saw that everybody had on their calendar, like at the beginning of the day, like a power up slot and then a shutdown slot at the
Yep.
end of the day. And all of these daily things, like, turn open threads from Slack into ClickUp tasks, or like at the beginning of the day, check the My Tasks view, clear out all overdues, like all of the stuff that you're supposed to do every day without fail. It was so important that it was even on the calendar marked there. So that's, and the idea being, for the power up, kind of the initial slot, you're supposed to do these things exactly the first thing of the day. For the shutdown slot, you're supposed to do these things without fail before you log off, and that really helps keep things consistent, keep the data clean. If you have a distributed team across time zones, somebody in an earlier time zone, if they run their shutdown routine, then people in the later time zones can actually trust the data and the system, that all the tasks are updated, there's status updates everywhere, etc. So I recommend setting something like that up on your calendars as well. And yeah, the link for that dashboard walkthrough is in the chat right now. Thanks, Jeff, for pulling that up.
Yeah. But yeah, going on with this, like things like team activity as well, to see like, hey, who made some due dates? Like I can filter and click up by where were their due date changes with no comments. Again, if that's our standard that we've set, I want to be able to funnel all that to one particular view to be able to, for me to be able to leave comments if that's the case. But big ones down here, the who's behind widget inside of ClickUp. This is a super helpful one. It's literally just called who's behind. If you go to add a widget on your ClickUp dashboard, or card as they call them, it's right there. And so this is a great one to be able to track those habits, because what this does is it starts to show me who has a lot of unread notifications in their inbox, who has a bunch of overdues, be able to see like, okay, Amy in this case, a lot of unread notifications, a lot of overdue tasks. That's not great. 0, 69, and 54. That kind of tells me, hey, he's not really operating that much inside of ClickUp. So that might be an issue. In addition, you can also celebrate wins. So workspace points is a great way to kind of celebrate like who's actually working well in the system, who's left a lot of comments, who's completed a lot of tasks, worked on a lot of tasks, and start to make it little more competitive. Add some gamification there too, to celebrate how the team's actually operating for those that are operating well. And so your ClickUp champion is really going to be in charge of looking through this on a daily basis to track those habits. And if they have to, they can message people on Slack or inside of ClickUp, say, hey, like I've noticed you haven't been completing your work on time, you haven't been tracking your time, or like it's not necessarily always their fault. They might just not know like what they're supposed to do. Maybe they didn't go through the training all that well. And so sometimes it's just coaching from your ClickUp champion to kind of walk them through how to set up those notifications or where to track their time. Some people just miss some of that stuff. And so in the first couple of weeks, especially, this is where we want to start to track those early on habits that the team is building to start to build that culture of accountability to push people in the right direction. And so you'll have things like daily spot checks. The other one is weekly roundups. There's a lot to talk about here, where now after that, you can kind of pull all those reports together. But a big thing that we do at Zenpilot after we're actually implemented is start to look at really the overall health of the project management system and all the tasks that are being completed. Because oftentimes you're going to have, let's say, 100 tasks in a project management system, but not all of those tasks were necessarily planned for that week. Like sometimes people had to push things, or maybe new tasks came up. So if we want to be really good at planning work, to understanding our team's capacity and being able to give realistic timelines, we want to make sure that we're kind of in this gold zone, as you can see this image here, of tasks that are planned. We completed those ones on schedule. So if I say, hey, this is due on Thursday or Friday or whatever dates those are, we want to make sure we get closer and closer and closer to making all of those due dates a reality. And so the beauty of ClickUp is you can start to track that. You can start to see like, hey, is the team actually completing a task when the project manager assigned and built out that timeline? Because otherwise, if we're not, then it's harder for us to kind of go to a client and say, hey, we can get this done by next Friday, if we're not sure if we're all that great at actually planning out our work. So you can start to track that, start to see like the tasks that were planned and if they're completed on schedule, to get us really in that gold zone versus ones that were pushed and completed off schedule, so on and so forth. We can start to track that behavior and really over time see that progression as well. And so there's a lot more in here as well too. Daily spot checks, weekly roundups. It's just a bunch of different cadences for your ClickUp champion to go through, all the way to the quarterly analysis, where now we're starting to look at, once we built those healthy habits, we can start to see how profitable we are across all of our clients as well. And I know we've kind of talked about a lot of these dashboards before. So we won't jump into too much detail there, but we just are building visibility that's going to help us hold the team accountable to get better visibility into the future. It's all a momentum game. And now jumping in, I know we're down to 4 minutes. This one will go relatively quickly. But after you're holding the team accountable, you're launching the new system. The biggest one here now to kind of help build on that momentum, and the last tip I'll give you is provide open avenues, like again, multiple different avenues. We talked about surveys before. These could be forums, these can be team meetings, one-on-ones, but open up different avenues for feedback and recommendations for the team. So once you've launched now, also tell the team like, hey, you're able to, if you want, leave feedback in with this specific form. So the beauty of ClickUp is you can also build forms. This doesn't necessarily have to be a ClickUp form. It can be something else, but just build something like this, like an internal process feedback form or whatever you want to call it. Put it in a spot inside of ClickUp, and you can also turn this and actually make it easier for people to see by turning this into a public form and putting it in your everything level if you want to do that. But what this does now is it gives people a space or a place that's very easy for them to be when they're working in the system. I can come here and just leave some feedback about maybe I saw an issue, maybe I am not a huge fan of the way that we're operating in this, or this task doesn't actually take 5 hours, which is what the time estimate you put on there is. So you can start to collect all of that feedback like this, just very easy. So anytime someone finds an issue, they leave a form request here and just plug it in, and then you'll start to capture all that information. Again, this is just going to help get the team bought in because they know like, hey, you're building a system that's going to serve all of us, not just your leadership team. And so that's super important. In addition, as we mentioned, that survey that we sent out earlier, we could do that on a quarterly basis to start to see if those answers get any better. So maybe the 1 to 5 scale that we sent out, are these 5s now or larger than that? Have we actually improved as we've gone on? And so now on a quarterly basis, we can start to get that feedback from the team to see if, hey, did this make an impact? Maybe we need to adjust some things as well. In addition, do those in your one-on-ones and team meetings. Just get that feedback all of the time to really start to understand how the team is adapting to this new methodology that we've created. And again, this is all change management. So you really need to think about your team because you're changing the way they operate on a daily basis. And these are a bunch of different tips that'll help you do just that. Obviously, there's a ton more to the process, and we lead teams through this entire process. So if you have any questions about that, go to zenpilot.com. But appreciate everyone that watched this. Those are my 5 tips, but I'll pass it over to Kuba for the final either Q&A or closing remarks.
The one question I'm seeing, because Adams, I assume, addressed over the course of the session. Lorenzo is asking in the chat, not in the Q&A, but I'll let it slide this one time. There's a question whether we'll be sharing this Miro board, but I believe that's a no on that, isn't it?
Yeah, I can see what I can do. This is not like a public Miro board or anything. Obviously, we'll have the recording so you can kind of see it. But yeah, I don't necessarily have a public view of this quite yet.
Okay, awesome. Adam, thank you so much for your comment. All right, a few things for you to keep in mind. Can you have the slides? Thank you.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, so a few things. Thank you. A few things for you to keep in mind. First of all, thank you so much for joining us here today. And remember, if you want to go deeper into your particular setup, your particular issues, the gaps in your project management system, or you have something a little bit more complex or hairy to discuss, or you just want to get your PM problems off your chest, go to zenpilot.com/call and have a call with our team. It's no risk. It's all free. And if you're not a fit to work with us on your problems, we'll just tell you, and we'll point you in the right direction for the solutions for your project management issues. On top of that, I recommend that you head to, next slide, please. I recommend that you head to zenpilot.com/resources to grab all of our guides, all of our additional video training that you can get on demand, and a bunch of other things. Besides, we've got templates. You can get, for example, our client onboarding template, which gives you a good example of like what a fully fledged Zenpilot system compliant template looks like with all the bells and whistles, so that can serve as great inspiration for you. Thank you so much for the presentation there, Jeff. Okay, next slide, please. Not to overstay our welcome here. We are almost over time here. And to not miss our next event, definitely go to zenpilot.com/newsletter, and I'll be sending out an email to you about all of our upcoming events. So you'll never miss a single one. It's also a good idea to follow Zenpilot on LinkedIn because we promote our stuff a lot there. And not always an event. We don't always live stream. Sometimes we just upload pre-recorded videos, and you can find those on our YouTube. So just look up ZenPilot on YouTube. A ton of additional tutorials from Jeff and the rest of our team, some even from yours truly, are on there, as well as episodes of Agency Journey, which is our podcast. But that's a separate thing that can still be very helpful for your agency operations. And that's it for CTAs. Thank you so much for joining today. I mean, we finished right on time. I have to say, Jeff, for a moment there, I kind of doubted you. I thought we would go way over, but you wrapped it up beautifully. So kudos on that. Let me just check the chat one last time. Roxy saying thanks for the helpful session. Yep. People seem to be pretty happy. I'll get back to the rest of the emails about the ClickUp notifications cheat sheet. What was the name of the podcast, Colby? The podcast is called Agency Journey, and yours truly is its humble host. I took over from Gray McKenzie, our CEO, some time ago. So you can look up Agency Journey on all the podcast platforms. It's got its own page on zenpilot.com as well. Or if you just check out ZenPilot on YouTube, all the episodes are there. And I hope you'll enjoy. If you've got somebody to recommend as a guest, I'm taking suggestions too. Alrighty, that's everything from me, Jeff. That's all the CTAs, all the information I wanted to share, all the ways to connect with us. Oh, connect with us on LinkedIn. Jakub Greitzer, Jeff Cypher. Happy to get new contacts there. That was the final CTA. And that's it for today. Jeff, did you have anything else to add?
No, my only closing thoughts are obviously this. We went over a ton today. If you have any questions about anything specifically, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Love to have a conversation about any of that, or like maybe what you're going through as a team, especially Adam. Love to have a conversation if you want to about like what's the current situation that's happening. I know you're already implemented and the team doesn't necessarily have the best of habits maybe, but love to kind of figure out and go through that, see how we can potentially help or just offer some suggestions there for you. So feel free to go on LinkedIn and find me there. But if you just want us to help design your system as well, as I said, it's always good to get an outside perspective on this of what's happening or how we can kind of design a solution that's going to help you really get to your root cause, that root issue, to help you build a more productive, profitable, and healthy team. Definitely go book a call on our website. We love to kind of explore the options for you there. But appreciate, again, everyone coming out today. We have plenty of more events coming up, so stay in tune with Kuba, especially on the first class operations for the next invitation. But we'll see you again next time, everyone.
Yeah, exactly. You know, Jeff, actually, I just realized I need to work on like an ending bit as well. I've got hello at the beginning, but what shall I say at the end? What do all the YouTubers say?
Goodbye,
Thanks so much for joining
goodbye.
us here today. Bye. Nah, I'm not gonna do that. Thanks for much for joining us here today, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone. I'm hitting the button. We're ending the webinar. Super nice of you to hang out. Bye.
See y'all.
See ya.